Alright, welcome to screencast of the 5-pin bowling app. I just released 2.0 to the App Store, and I thought I should kind of go through and give you a walkthrough of what the application looks like now, what things have changed. So here I'm on my main screen. I tap on that, I come into the main screen. Nothing much has changed here. So we're going to go into Open. I've got myself defined. I go into what is now a series screen. So I'm now treating open bowling and league bowling very similarly. So before, where I would add a game to open bowling and it would give me a list of individual games, now when I create a, let's just do that, when I go and create games for today for open bowling, it's going to group all of those games together, and it's going to treat them as a single thing. So I can get an average for the day, I can do stats for that day, I can do all of those kinds of things. So that's great. The other difference here is that before, where it used to be just one, now it can be up to 50. Now 50 is a ludicrously large number. Nobody's likely going to bowl 50 games in a day, but hey, if you wanted to, it really does support however many you want. And I made 50 as an upper limit. It's kind of arbitrary, but you know, I thought that was a good number. I didn't get any feedback during beta testing that that wasn't going to be enough. So now you can put in as many games as you want to bowl. So I'm going to do some practice today. I'm going to start with 5 games, and I'm going to tap on OK. So here is probably the most significant, biggest difference that you're going to notice in the application just in day-to-day usage, is that the screen has changed quite a bit. The pins that I had hand-drawn back in version 1.0 of the application, those are gone. Right? So what I did is I created 3D models of 5-pin bowling pins and a 3D model of pins and a deck and the whole thing, and rendered those out. And so now we've got photorealistic imagery here in the application. So the images, the pins are lit well, they show reflection, they show shadows. It all looks, personally, I think it looks way better than it did before. And then in the bottom part of the screen here, we've got the games that you created. So I created 5 games, so if I scroll through this list, you can see there's 5 games. So before, where I had a switcher up at the top, it used to show 1 to 5. I had a limit of 1 to 5 just so I could fit that switcher on screen. If I had more than 5, it kind of got unwieldy. Now if I put in 50 games, you can see that because this is a scrolling list, you can have as many as you want in here. And so the switcher is gone, and it's now just this nice scrolling list. I moved the lock button and the info button to the header here, the header on the table list of games, and so I think it's a much cleaner look. But everything else kind of works pretty much the way it did before. So you can see that the blue highlighted frame in game 1 is where I would is what frame I'm on. So as I touch the pins, those change. If I switch to the first frame of game 2 and do a similar thing, you can see that that's the one that's changing. If I go back to series, now you can see the grouping of games. Right, so you can see that all games are listed here for today, and they're labeled as that date. The other thing that's kind of interesting is that games that are incomplete currently have aren't included in the average calculation, which is nice. So let's just take this this first game. You can see that I've highlighted frame 2 of game 1. If I hit the info button, that info button is now showing me the details for that particular game, and I can say, well, it's not 15, it's 250. That's what I bowled. And you can see when I scroll over to the right, you can see that the override value is 250. If I go back to series, you can see that completed game is now included in the average. Right? So I've got a total of 265. That's my series total. My average is 250, which is accurate. If I wanted to go and change any of the other games, so let's suppose I wanted to change game 3, and I wanted to say that was a 230 game, tap on done, you can see that that's now reflected. Right? So that all kind of works the way it did before, but I think it's a lot smoother. I think there's a lot less tapping around. I think there's a lot less information. One of the things that I've noticed just using the application is that if I'm bowling a series and I've completed game 1 and now I'm on game 2, and let's suppose these were all actually filled in with proper bits of data. Right? So we just go and do that, and now I'm on game 2, frame 2. I can compare how I how I'm doing in this game compared to last game without a lot of tapping around. It's really easy to do comparison that way, and I think this is a lot more usable. So I hope you guys appreciate this one. This is a good addition. One of the other changes that I made throughout the application, and primarily so that I could support iPad, was that I now support both portrait and landscape. So all that means is I support when you go and rotate your phone. Okay, so I just rotated my phone, and because we're on a phone, there's not a lot of vertical real estate. So what I chose to do in this case is just hide the pins and show you as much of the game information as you can fit on screen at one time. So that's what I'm doing with that. All right. Now, if I go into any of these other screens, so I go into series and I rotate, again, same thing. I'm showing you more information, which I think is valuable. So if I have a lot of series or a lot of games in a series, maybe I'm bowling in a tournament or something, I can see all of those games quite easily. So let's just rotate that back. Stats and percentages. Okay, so here's another interesting little bit. If I click on stats now, you can see that percentages is what's being displayed at the moment. So my middle hit percentage is 100, strike percentage is 100. Of course, I'm faking it all out, so that's why it is the way it is. But if I tap on the percentage, now you can actually see how I calculated that percentage. So there is a one strike, and I had one frame that I was capable of actually getting a strike on, and I'm gonna show you why it is calculating it that way. You can see in that first game I actually entered some strikes, but because this is an override game that I've actually gone and modified the value for that thing, and I'm just gonna reset this thing, that those values, those strikes, weren't included. If I now say that's not overridden, that game is now just me recording frame by frame, you should see that my stats change. Right, so now I've gotten 4 strikes, or I've hit the middle 4 times out of 4. My strike percentage is I hit the middle pin. I had 4 attempts at hitting strikes, and I've got it twice. So you can see why that's being reflected the way it is. Okay. All right. Yeah. So that's that stats percentage, the actual values. One of the other things that's kind of cool here is the sharing menu, or this action menu. So you can see that reset frame, what if, share game are all still there. Those are the way they were before. But now I've got share series. So what that means is that when I share series, I now bring up this iOS sharing screen, and you can see that I can share to anything, right? Because what I'm doing behind the scenes is I'm creating an image of all of the games that you've bowled. And you can take that image and you can put it in an email, you can send it instant messaging, if Twitter, Facebook, Flickr, you can just save an image if you want. I got Pinterest and Tumblr here as well, so you could use those, you could print it, you could copy it, you can do whatever you want with the thing. I'm going to show you what that looks like when I go to mail. So here, I'm creating a new mail message, and you can see that all of the games are now included in the email. Right, so instead of one at a time, you can do them all, and I know people have asked for that one before, so I'm happy to make that possible now. And lastly, and maybe not least importantly, is I've also added support for dynamic type within iOS, and so a lot of people aren't familiar with what dynamic type is necessarily. So let's just demonstrate it. So here I am in settings. I'm going to go to display and set display and brightness, and I'm going to go down to this text size thing. And now I've got this this bar at the bottom that I can now modify. So this slider. So I've now changed it to make text as big as possible. When I switch back to the bowling app, you can see that now everything is made larger. So all of the text is larger. I can now display it. If I go into stats, you can see that everything is larger. So if you're getting older and maybe your eyes aren't as good as they were, or maybe you wear glasses and you find that the default font size is too small, you can go and change that. You can affect that so that it's not difficult to see. So I think that's a great thing to have. Um, I th- um, I think that's very useful. So those are the big changes that are in 2.0. Um, if you got any questions about things, or you got things that still bug you about the application, things you would like changed, feel free to let me know. I'm always working on the app. There's always ideas. I got a big long list. Um, so I hope you enjoy what you've seen so far. And the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a version of this video